everyone. My name is Kristin Schumacher. I'm with the California Budget and Policy Center. For those of you that aren't familiar, the Budget Center is a nonprofit here in Sacramento that engages in fiscal and policy research with the goal of improving the lives of low and middle income Californians. In my presentation today, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of early care and education in the May revision. I wanted to begin by just noting how severe our California budget crisis is this year. The U.S. economy officially entered a recession in March, and the administration expects this recession to be more severe than the Great Recession. They're forecasting that unemployment will peak at about 24%. As a result of the recession, state revenues have plummeted, and we're looking at a $54 billion shortfall in the current fiscal year and the next. In the May revision, the administration uses a variety of strategies to address this shortfall, which are listed here on this slide. And the largest category is trigger cuts. So absent additional federal assistance and federal relief funds, the May revision includes $14 billion in cuts across the state budget. If federal funding comes through, however, all or some of these cuts might be avoided. So the subsidized early learning and care system is not immune from these spending reductions and these trigger cuts. There's more than $1 billion in cuts and reduced funding in the May revision. So the first trigger cut listed here includes the infrastructure grants program. As you heard, this program was created just last year in the 2019-20 budget agreement, and policymakers set aside $263 million to be used over a 4-year period to renovate and or expand facilities to serve more kids. The administration is proposing also to eliminate the workforce development grants program, to cut provider payment rates, and to eliminate preschool spaces in both the current fiscal year and the next. However, remember, if federal funds become available, all or some of these cuts may be avoided. In addition to the trigger cuts, there are also some proposed spending cuts that would occur regardless if we receive additional federal funds. So the first one listed here, grants for full-day kindergarten facilities. So the 18-19 and 19-20 budget agreement set aside a total of about $400 million to transition part-day kinder programs to full-day kinder programs. This pot of funding overall has been underutilized, so I'm mentioning it here because in the January proposal, the administration had proposed that the state repurpose a portion of the remaining funds, $300 million, for preschool facilities on school campuses. So this grant funding would be eliminated in the May revision, regardless of whether or not the state receives additional federal funds. In addition, the May revision would withdraw the proposal to add an additional $75 million to the Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program. This program was created with one-time funds as part of the 18-19 state budget agreement, and it was to increase access to early learning and care for children with special needs. And the funds were to help with the cost of building or modifying facilities. There was a great deal of demand for this funding, which is why the 19-20 budget agreement increased funding for the grant program, and it's also why the administration was proposing additional funding for this year too. So this grant funding would be eliminated in the May revision, regardless of whether or not the state receives additional federal funding. And then finally, the May revision would eliminate funding for roughly 3,100 general child care slots that were to be added with Prop 64 marijuana tax dollars. I wanted to conclude my brief overview just to note that there are additional monies that the federal money that the state is allocating in the May revision. You're going to hear more about the Federal CARES Act, and I just have a list here of the $350 million in one-time emergency funding provided through the CARES Act specifically for emergency child care. The May revision proposes to reimburse the state for about $152 million for actions already taken in response to the pandemic in regards to subsidized child care. And then they're also proposing to utilize the remaining funds to support providers who remain open by providing them stipends, to expand access to emergency care for essential workers and other high-risk populations, and then also to waive family fees through the end of the fiscal year. And then lastly, a good point of good news, The budget would provide an additional 5,600 spaces in the alternative payment program, with 53.3 million in new federal funds, new federal CCDBG dollars that were part of the increased appropriation that was part of the federal fiscal year 2020 appropriation. And they just received the money and slotted it into the budget in the May revision. This final slide, you have my contact information. If you want to get in touch or have questions, please feel free to do so. Thank you.